Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. It's amazing my face doesn't bruise when I do that. I must be Superman. I must be a Kryptonian. Welcome, 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 and welcome to Friday's edition of the DCEU Daily. So basically, it's the final day in my hotel. In a few hours' time, I'll be leaving here and going back to my abode with the big TV and the DCEU trailers behind me. I'm excited. I hope you are too. So people, the environment in Hollywood is changing. Now, you may have saw my video last night about all these critics hating Lion King. They are now turning on Disney. Surprise, surprise. But why is that happening, and what's this got to do with the DCEU and DC movies? Well, it's got a lot to do with it, because DC movies have been suffering because critics and mainstream audiences have decided for many years now that all films should be like the MCU. Fun, jokey, bright colour palettes, no depth, no critical acclaimed storytelling or fleshing out. Do you know what I mean? It's all about the fun. Everything should be about escapism and fun. I am the biggest fan of escapism. Escapism is why I love superheroes, movies, TV shows, but there has to be a balance. There should be realism and fantasy. And this is the problem. But I think and this is why I'm talking about what's going on with Lion King. I think even the critics are now fed up. And I think this situation really did start with Disney and the Marvel Cinematic Universe re-releasing Endgame. I think that really did show the whole world what type of company Disney are. Now, people have always been talking about Bob Iger. I know I'm talking about a lot of unrelated DC things, but bear with me, right? So people have been talking about Bob Iger of being a genius. The truth is, he's not a genius. He took over a company that was very famous for entertaining children and families. They got involved with Pixar. That started because before Disney, they had a really dry period. They weren't very successful. They then got into business with Pixar. They eventually bought it. Toy Story changed everything because it was a new way of doing their animated movies, which is what they were famous for. So all of a sudden, that was a genius move that did start to work, but that was the genius of Bob Lasseter. It was another situation that fell into Disney's lap, thanks to George Lucas, who actually did invent Pixar's kind of animatronic technology, which Bob Lasseter bought off of him for a big price, and then he got involved with Disney. So there's that. And then what happened was, out of nowhere, they decided to buy Marvel Studios, which was an interesting move if you think about it, because at the time when they bought it, I think we already had Iron Man. I think we already had Iron Man 2. I think Disney Studios were only involved from the first Avengers onwards. And this is really an interesting situation now. Please bear with me, because the first Avengers, which they call Avengers Assemble, which is a stupid title, it should just be called Avengers, but anyway, right? By some happy accident, this film becomes a worldwide billion-dollar hit. And everything changes, because before that, people were making real films, sometimes, really gritty films, sometimes bright escapist films. There was a mixture in Hollywood. Avengers changed everything, and people were saying, we want every film to be like the Avengers. This is where it started, and this is where the Disney dominance started, because they thought, right, let's buy a Lucasfilm, let's do the same thing there. And they imploded because of what they were attempting to do with Star Wars, because the truth is, they wanted to take away the heart out of Star Wars. They took away the lightsaber out of Star Wars. What has this got to do with the DCEU? So much, because in comes Zack Snyder. Christopher Nolan brings Zack Snyder in, right? A very, individual, unique director. David S. Goyer, who's Chris's friend. They wrote the Dark Knight trilogy together. Eventually, Ben Affleck would bring in Chris Terrio, right? So all of a sudden, we had Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, which were very, very unique takes of superhero movies. They were very grounded, very realistic. It was like we were putting Batman and Superman in the real world. And what happened with that, a lot of people, because people were saying everything should be like the MCU, the DCEU was being attacked. All of a sudden, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman were called bad movies. And they weren't. They were laughing. at the Martha scene, which is not funny, which is a great moment, whatever they say. And in any other era, Zack Snyder, David S. Goyer, and Chris Terrio would be lauded. Now, all of a sudden, the times are changing. All of a sudden, Todd Phillips comes into the mix. Todd Phillips, an old school movie maker who admits he doesn't even know how to do green screen, which I think is wonderful. When green screen first came in and CGI first came in, I think we were very excited about it. Wow, look at those spaceships. Look how real they look, right? But there's come a time now where everything's CGI heavy and CGI movies are being criticised. Now, I don't mind green screen movies. I don't mind a CGI dominated kind of universe. I don't mind that. But a lot of people are kind of fed up of the final CGI battles in superhero movies. I'm not. I love them. One of the reasons the third act of Wonder Woman is criticised, again, I love the third act of Wonder Woman. But the times are changing because people are fed up of just seeing one type of film. I suppose it's like saying, say if I became the master of the universe, right? And I said, I only want to see people with gym bodies, right? So all of a sudden I create these clones, right? And they're all beautiful, they've all got gym bodies, but they've got no personality, they've got no skills. The world implodes because of my stupid decision. This is what's happened with Hollywood. They've imploded because they've all gone after the MCU mantle. And even Disney did it. They wanted to copy what they've already done with Star Wars. They wanted to Marvelize Star Wars, and it didn't work. But worse, they wanted to force diversity and things like that into Star Wars as well. Again, nothing wrong with diversity, but the way they did it, the commentary they were making was so wrong, so bad, and basically they attacked their very audience because the predominant kind of gender who watches Star Wars are men, and you're saying men are bad, men are arrogant, men are flyboys, yada, 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 as well as other things, right? So Star Wars imploded because of what they attempted to do. But they weren't willing at the time to do that to the MCU because they wanted just to keep the MCU safe. It's doing really well. Let's just keep the jokey, generic films coming. And so they've been very successful. Then I think what happens is with Todd Phillips, he comes in, he decides to create this black label. The Joker movie is going to change everything. It's going to change the environment we are in. It really is, because the Joker movie is so special, so unique. Someone said to me the other day, if it's nothing to do with the comics, why should it be called Joker? Because he is the Joker. He is the Joker. Joaquin Phoenix is absolutely the Joker. And let me be clear here. Because I think Todd Phillips was being very mischievous when he was saying nothing's taken from any comics, because it is. In one of the graphic novels, the Joker starts off being a comedian. This is exactly how Joaquin's Arthur Fleck starts off. He's desperate to be a great comedian. So there are elements from the comics. He's being mischievous. He's just trying to create a conversation. I've seen the film. I should know. This is I'd say one of the top 10 films I've ever seen in my fucking lifetime. So please don't tell me he shouldn't be called the Joker. This is an amazing film, and this is a game changer where DC under Walter Hamada, Todd Phillips, Peter Safran are going to have these kind of amazing. Now, this is another thing I want to talk about as well. You know, I'm a big fan of Chris Wong Spencer from Ping Pong Flicks. But I kind of got a bit irked by his video. It doesn't mean I don't like him anymore. It doesn't mean I'm not going to support him. I always support him. He's a great guy. He's doing great things, especially for the Snyder Cut. He started to make some assumptions, and the assumptions he was trying to make was that DC are just going to make low-budget films now. They're not going to make any green screen films. Wonder Woman 84 probably won't have many special effects. I think he himself was being mischievous. Of course there's going to be lots of effects. Of course Wonder Woman 1984 is a high budgeted film. They've just announced The Flash. Do you really think they'll get away with making a budgeted Flash movie? Of course not. The guy has to run at speed with lightning bolts around him. There's going to be no cheap budget there. there's a balance. There's the DCEU and there's the DC Dark. And as Todd Phillips said, DC Dark, the DC Black label, is a place that Disney can't go to because of the audience, because of their fandom, obsessed with these family movies. And this is a very interesting moment. And as I say, the Joker movie is a game changer. And when it's successful, there's going to be more and more. This has been a terrible year for films. I think I enjoyed Shazam. I thought Endgame was okay, but Infinity War was that, and Endgame was a cop-out, a cheap cop-out. So I haven't seen a really great movie, but I thought that Shazam was a really good, enjoyable, fun little family movie that managed to balance dark scares and family commentary with a really great fun movie. They did that. So they proved they actually out Marvel in a way. They created a family movie that could be dark and light at the same time. And it just proves how clever they are over at New Line Cinema. So as I say, things are fundamentally changing. And this is why Grace Randolph did her video. Because she's trying to create negativity. Because there isn't so much negativity anymore. Because people look at it now and say, wait a minute, we loved Wonder Woman. Justice League, let's not talk about that because we know what happened there. Aquaman was a really great blockbuster superhero movie, over $1 billion. Shazam made 4 times its budget. How can we criticize them now? And I would even fight anyone who tries to criticize BVS and MOS, but that's another thing. They're very unique takes on superhero movies too. Of the most important, most famous superheroes. So the way Zack did them and the way David S. Goyer did them was controversial and was divisive, but I loved them and I always loved them. And I just think the way Shazam was done and all the Easter eggs for BVS and MOS proves that Warner Brothers and DC will not hide away from what Snyder created, but also they are going to find a new way of doing things. And I think that's fine as long as there's a balance. All of a sudden, the Joker movie is a game changer. We get loads of these kind of unique DC Black movies while the DCEU continues. We know that. Otherwise, they just wouldn't announce the Flash movie, right? So we know the DCEU is not being rebooted. Maybe it's being course corrected a little bit, but it's not being rebooted. They're not going to hide away from Snyder's films. They're there. We've seen Easter eggs in the most recent DCEU movie, and there's no hiding from that, and they don't want to hide from that. These are now the DC movieverse has got a leader, a really intelligent leader with really great filmmakers like James Wan, Todd Phillips, David F. Sandberg, really real filmmakers that come from the independent game, not people who are just going to direct the film and just do what Kevin Feige tells them to do. There's a big difference because Warner Brothers has this in their history. They've been making films like the Joker movie for the past 60 or 70 years. Individual, unique takes, gritty takes on films that people go away thinking, wow, they may not make $1 billion or $2 billion, but we have to move away from this box office obsession and look at the content and say, did I enjoy that? Yeah. As long as it made enough money to be successful and make more films, more DC films, we don't care about anything else. We mustn't care about studio's profit margin. It's pathetic and it's short-sighted of us and it makes us thick. It makes us stupid if you're more focused on box office than the actual film that you're watching. So what do you think? Do you think the times are changing? Do you think the dominance of Marvel and Disney is over? I certainly hope so. I certainly do. Please comment down below. Please like, share and subscribe. In my next video, I'll be back home. Kind of dreading it. I'd rather stay here.